Hi, third graders. Welcome to your first digital literacy lesson. I was trying to decide if I should say writing or reading, and it's kind of both. So welcome to your first digital literacy lesson, which is a combination of reading and writing. Before I start, I want to say to you that this lesson will be different than the lessons that you're used to getting in school. And that's because at school, we get to teach you a lesson every single day. We get to teach you lots of lessons every single day. On Schoology, when you're learning at home from these videos, we're going to try to do 1 or 2 lessons a week, which means that we kind of need to teach you more than just one thing in the lesson. So there's kind of a lot in this lesson. The good news is that you can always watch it over again if you need to, if you get confused or if you forget something. Also, I want you to know that all of the things that are written on this backwards poster, all of the things that I'll go over in this lesson, those are typed up for you, and they're in an Animal Reports, I think it's Animal Reports research page in the Animal Reports folder on the Schoology page. So after you watch this video, once you're ready to get to work, you can open up that page and it will tell you all the steps that you need to take. Okay. So I'm going to be reading from some notes because I'm a little nervous. This is my first videotaped lesson, and also there's kind of a lot that I want to tell you. So sometimes you'll see me looking at these note pages. Okay, so before school was canceled, when we were in our classrooms, we had started writing animal reports, and we had just barely started. The things that we had done so far were listened to a lot of different animal books. And we'd started to think about the different ways that those books share information about animals with you. We thought a little bit about how the information was organized. And I want to remind you that in my class, some of the books that we read were a book about wolves, and we read a book about reptiles, and we read a book about dragonflies. And we thought about how the information about those animals was organized. And one of the things that we talked about was how the information in those books was organized by chapters. Like each chapter would have some kind of a title. In one of the books, the chapters was a question, and then that chapter would answer that question. In another book, each chapter was about a different type of animal. In the wolves book, each chapter had a title, and then that chapter would share information that was related to that title. So when we're talking about chapters, or we're talking about parts of information about something bigger, we're going to call those subtopics. The topic would be the animal, the big thing that you're talking about, and then each little section, each part of information, we call that a subtopic. And that's going to become important later on in my lesson. So today, what we're going to do is talk about how to start researching an animal. You're going to choose an animal to research, and then I'm going to show you the steps for starting to find out more about that animal and taking notes about that animal. Okay, so if we were at school, you would spend a lot of time talking with your partner and figuring out together what animal you wanted to research, and you'd have lots and lots and lots of choices. Because home learning happens a little bit differently, you are able to choose from 5 different animals. And the reason for that is because we wanted to make sure that you could have lots of information about whichever animal you chose. And these 5 animals seemed pretty cool, and it also seemed like there was some really good information about them on Epic Books and on the different resources that you have access to through the SPS online resources. Okay, so the animals that you may choose from are hedgehogs, polar bears, poison dart frogs, owls, and Arctic foxes. Your first step when you're researching your animal is written in backwards up here. It just says choose an animal. So from those 5 animals, which one really interests you? Which one do you have lots of questions about and you think you'd want to find a lot of information out about? I think that for me, the one that I'm really interested in is polar bears, because I know that polar bears are in danger, so I would like to know a lot more about them. So for my research project, I'm going to be thinking and finding out more about polar bears. Okay, The second step is that we're going to start researching that animal. That means we're going to start reading and finding out a lot about that animal, and we need to take notes about what we find out so that we can remember it and then we can share what we find out in a report. The first step to starting to take notes is think about what do we want to take notes about. If we were at school, this would happen over a series of time. We'd ask a bunch of different questions about that animal, and we would organize those questions into different research categories. Because we don't have that time at school with you, we have decided for you what the questions are that you'll be finding out more about these animals. So we're going to call those questions your subtopics. These are the different categories of information that you will be finding out more about your animals. So the questions are, sorry that they're backwards, what does my animal eat? And maybe how does my animal eat? I'm going to save that one for last. How does my animal behave? What are the different things that my animal does that are interesting? Where does my animal live? And then the last is kind of like a bonus subtopic. It's other interesting facts about my animal. So if you find out other interesting things and they don't really fit into these three other categories, then you'd put that information here. Okay, so you're going to make one page for each of these questions. You could copy each subtopic onto a piece of paper, like I did. Or if you have a printer at home, then I have made these pages available on Schoology page, and you can just print them out. If you're going to make your own, then you'll go into the animal research steps page, and you will just copy each of these questions onto a separate piece of paper, like I did. Okay, the next step is that I'm going to find some information about my animal, and then I'm going to read it, and I'm going to take notes about what I find out onto these different pages. We found some information about these animals for you. So again, if you go into the animal reports folder, then there's an animal reports resources page, and there are a whole bunch of websites on there that you can go to find out more information about your animal. Okay, but I have a book about polar bears because I took it from school. So I'm going to use that to show you how I would read and then think about what I read and then take notes as I'm reading. Okay, so watch me as I read this book about polar bears, and then I think about what I just read and what I learned, and then I take a note about what I learned. All right, polar bears. Polar bears are big. The polar bear is the biggest bear in the world. They're even bigger than the Kodiak brown bear. A giant male polar bear can weigh 1,700 pounds. That's about as heavy as a small car. Females usually weigh less than males. One polar bear was said to weigh 2,200 pounds. That's more than a ton of bear. So I'm going to stop here. I just read one chunk of text, and I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to ask myself, what did I just read? Okay, so I remember that I learned that polar bears are huge. They can be really, really heavy. I'm going to look back at the number because I don't remember the exact number. A male polar bear can weigh 1,700 pounds. I also remember reading that the females usually weigh less than the males, but they're super, super heavy. So I want to make sure I write that down because that seems like important information about polar bears. So I'm going to go to my note-taking sheet. And next I need to think, where does that information belong? Does it go under where my animal lives? No, totally doesn't. How much a polar bear weighs has nothing to do with where the polar bear lives. How does my animal behave? No, it doesn't really fit there. What does my animal eat? I mean, I guess it has to eat a lot, but it doesn't really talk about what it eats. So other interesting facts about my animal, I think that's where that would go. Okay, so then I want to write about what I read. I don't need to write in complete sentences. I want to write it kind of quickly, and I don't want to write exactly what was written in the book. We never want to copy down the exact words that an author wrote unless we're doing it in a special way, and I'm not going to teach you that special way today. So I want to do what's called paraphrasing. I also sometimes think of it as writing like a caveman, because when I think about how cavemen spoke, they spoke like, me hungry, or me go hunting. They just do the most important words in short little clipped sentences. So that's kind of how I want to take my notes too. So, okay, so what was I trying to talk about? Polar bears are really big. They're really heavy. So I'm actually going to write PB for polar bears, just so I can save some time writing. PB, really heavy. And then I also remember that a male, PB really heavy, male equals 1,700 pounds. So I just wrote that like that. And then I also remember that female weigh less than males. Okay, so I wrote that there. Females weigh less than males. Okay, I'm going to read one more page and show you that process again, where I read a chunk, I think about what I read and what I learned, and then I figure out how to take a note about that. Polar bears are tiny. Wait, that's confusing because I just read that they're huge. Polar bears weigh only 1 pound at birth. Oh my gosh, I'm picturing a teeny tiny adorable little polar bear. They will grow to 30 times their birth weight by the time they leave the den. A mother polar bear is not able to eat while she nurses her babies from January to April. By then, mother polar bears are very hungry. Okay, I just learned a lot of different things. I learned that newborn polar bears are only 1 pound. I also learned that while a mother polar bear is feeding her newborn, she doesn't eat. So she gets really, really hungry. So I want to think about where to put those facts. Where does my animal live? Not really. How does my animal behave? Like, what types of things does my animal do? Well, I did learn that a mother doesn't eat while she's nursing her baby polar bears. And that's something that she does. That's a behavior she has, so I could put that there. So I'm going to write mother doesn't eat while nursing babies. I'm going to do an exclamation point because I was pretty surprised by that fact. Mother doesn't eat while nursing babies. Thank you for reading that backwards. And then I also learned that the newborns are 1 pound. That's not a behavior. It's not where the animal lives. It's kind of another interesting fact about my animal. Newborn equals 1 pound. I just added that there. Okay. So I'm going to keep reading this on my own, and after I read each chunk, I'm going to stop and I'm going to tell myself what I just learned, and then I'm going to go through my note cards and figure out where is the best place to write down what I just learned. And then when I figure out what the best place is for that information, I'm just going to write like one sentence that doesn't have all the words. It's just like paraphrasing. It's just a note for myself so I can remember what I learned. Like, mother doesn't eat while nursing babies. I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm going to keep doing it until I've like pretty much filled up the page, each page with notes. I want to have at least 5 notes per page. That's how people research. They research anytime they want to find out about something, and then they want to share that information. They find out more about that thing, and they think in their heads, like, what did I just learn? And then they find the best place to store that information in a quick and easy way, so that later, when we start writing about these facts and making our own animal reports, we have all those notes to do the writing from. But this week, your job is to take notes. It's to make your note-taking pages. It's to go to those animal reports resources page and read all about the animal that you choose and take lots and lots of notes about your animal. The final step that you can't really see here because it's blocked by my lamp, but the final step is to share your notes with your teacher. So there is also in the Animal Reports folder, there is an Animal Reports notes assignment. And once you're done taking notes, like maybe on Thursday or Friday of this week, when you're done taking notes, you'll go into that assignment and you will take a picture of the notes that you've taken and submit them, and then they'll get sent to your teacher and we can check out the work that you've been doing. Okay, that's all for now. That was a lot of information. Go back and rewatch this if you need to. Make sure you go into the Animal Reports folder to see all the different things that are available to you, and email us if you have any questions. Okay, thanks guys. Good luck.